Look, I'm just saying maybe we should take our ball and go home, Ambassador Thompson said, leaning back in her chair and propping her feet up on the pristine, crystalline conference table. The gesture made several of the alien delegates visibly wince. Perfect. The Zentari representative, a towering mass of iridescent tentacles arranged in what humans had learned was their version of extreme distress, rippled in agitation. Ambassador, you cannot simply leave the Galactic Council. This is unprecedented. Watch us, Thompson replied, examining her nails with exaggerated disinterest. Humanity's been part of this circus for what, 20 years now? And in that time, we've had to sit through approximately 8,000 meetings about proper protocol for addressing the Grand Poobah of wherever. Another 12,000 about the correct angle to bow when greeting various species. And let's not even get started on that 6-month summit about which direction to stir your tea to avoid offending the Xerxians. Those were vital diplomatic... The Xerxian delegate started to protest. Counterclockwise, Thompson interrupted. The answer was counterclockwise. We spent 6 months deciding that stirring tea counterclockwise was the only acceptable way to avoid suggesting you wanted to mate with someone's third cousin twice removed. Meanwhile, actual problems got ignored because everyone was too busy arguing about whether the Praxi ambassador's ceremonial headpiece was an appropriate shade of mauve. The Praxi delegate's head frills flared in embarrassment. That had been a particularly heated debate. But humanity's perspective is invaluable. The Aldebaran representative's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of genuine distress. Your species brings such unique approaches to problems. You mean we actually solve them instead of forming committees to study the formation of other committees? Thompson snorted. Yeah, that's kind of our point. We're tired of playing political footsie while actual work needs doing. The massive chamber erupted into chaos as various delegates tried to speak over each other. Thompson just smiled and pulled out her phone, starting up a game of Angry Birds. The nostalgic gaming choice was deliberate. She'd found that the dated physics-based destruction particularly annoyed the more mathematically inclined species. Order! Order! The council speaker, a being that looked like what might happen if a jellyfish mated with a disco ball, pulsed frantically with waves of alarmed bioluminescence. Ambassador Thompson, surely we can discuss this reasonably. Oh, now, you want to be reasonable? Thompson looked up from her game. Where was that reasoning when we suggested that maybe, just maybe, we should actually do something about the pirates in the Carina sector instead of debating whether to classify them as administration-challenged entrepreneurial vessels to avoid offense? That terminology adjustment was vital for... Those entrepreneurial vessels blew up 3 cargo ships last week. Thompson cut in. But hey, at least we didn't hurt their feelings by calling them pirates, right? The chamber fell silent. Several delegates had the grace to look embarrassed, or at least their species' equivalent of embarrassment, which in the case of the MX Tali involved turning their exoskeletons inside out. The fact is, Thompson continued, swinging her feet down and leaning forward, humanity's done playing this game. We've got our own problems to solve, our own space to explore, and our own way of doing things. If you all want to spend another century debating the proper protocol for sneezing in zero gravity, be our guests. We're out. But what about the trade agreements? The defense pacts? The cultural exchange programs? The Centaurian delegate's voice modulator was practically squeaking in panic. Oh, those can stay in place, Thompson said cheerfully. We're not isolationists. We're just done pretending that spending 6 years deciding on the official font for council documents is a good use of anyone's time. That was a vital standardization. It was Helvetica! Thompson threw her hands up. It was always going to be Helvetica. Everyone knows it was going to be Helvetica. The only reason it took 6 years is because the Proxians insisted their written language couldn't possibly be represented in sans serif, only to eventually admit they'd been reading it upside down the whole time. The Proxian delegates sank lower in their hover chair, all 7 of their faces blushing simultaneously. But who will handle the crises? The Arcturus representative's crystalline form was vibrating with anxiety. Who will deal with the unexpected problems, the emergency situations? Thompson's smile turned predatory. Oh, don't worry. We'll still be around. We're just not going to wait for permission or worry about stepping on diplomatic toes anymore. Next time there's a problem, we'll solve it. Simple as that. Without consulting the council? The horror in the speaker's voice made their bioluminescence strobe like a malfunctioning Christmas tree. Yep. Thompson popped the P sound, knowing it would make the sound-sensitive species twitch. Consider us the galaxy's new emergency response team. You all keep having your meetings and filing your reports in triplicate. We'll handle the actual work. This is completely unprecedented! The Zentari representative was now so agitated their tentacles had tied themselves in actual knots. There are procedures, protocols, proper channels. And that's exactly why we're leaving, Thompson said, standing up. Because somehow, in all your advanced wisdom, none of you have figured out that sometimes you need to cut through the red tape and just do something. She started walking toward the chamber's exit, then paused and turned back. Oh, and by the way, we're taking Friday casual dress code with us when we go. Good luck deciding on the new standard for proper council attire. I hear the Andromedans are pushing for mandatory formal wear made of crystallized methane. Should only take a decade or two to sort that out. The chaos that erupted behind her as she left was music to her ears. She managed to maintain her diplomatic composure all the way to her private shuttle before bursting into laughter. How'd it go? Her aide Jackson asked as she collapsed into her seat. About as well as expected, Thompson grinned. I give it less than a week before they're begging us to come back. That long? Well, I might have mentioned that humanity's considering starting our own galactic organization, one with blackjack and hookers. Jackson choked on his coffee. You didn't. Nah, but I did strongly imply that we might start solving problems without asking permission first. The Arcturus representative nearly shattered themselves in panic. You're evil. I prefer efficiently chaotic, Thompson said, kicking off her shoes. Besides, someone had to shake things up. Did you know they're still debating whether to add a 7th subcommittee to the committee for determining the necessary number of committees? No way. They've only been at it for 3 years, though, so they're making good time by council standards. The shuttle's comm system suddenly lit up with incoming messages. Thompson glanced at the display and started laughing again. What is it? Jackson asked. The Praxi just sent an emergency request for clarification on whether our withdrawal means they can go back to stirring their tea clockwise. And? I told them we're instituting a new human policy of stirring in figure eights just to mess with everyone. You're going to start an interstellar incident. Please, Thompson scoffed. The way this galaxy runs, they'll need at least 5 years to decide if my message counts as an official policy statement or not. By then, we'll have probably solved half the actual problems they've been ignoring. The comm system pinged again, and again, and again. Oh, look, Thompson said dryly. The Centaurians want to know if our withdrawal invalidates the Treaty of Proper Sock arrangement in zero gravity. The what now? Don't ask. It took 8 months and 3 minor wars to negotiate. Apparently, some species consider unsecured floating socks to be deeply offensive. The messages kept coming, each more panicked than the last. Thompson started sorting them into categories: genuine diplomatic concerns, ridiculous protocol questions, and what she privately labeled as, oh shit, who's going to actually do things now, queries. You know what the funny part is? She said after a while. None of them have figured out the real reason we're leaving. Which is? Humanity's gotten really good at solving problems while these guys argue about them. We've basically been running a shadow government for the last 5 years, actually fixing things while the council debates what color to make the warning problem ahead signs. Jackson's eyes widened. We have? Oh yeah. Who did you think dealt with that asteroid heading for the Proxian colony last year? Or sorted out the pandemic on Centauri Prime? Or stopped that rogue AI in the Carina sector? While the council was still deciding whether to classify the AI as a silicon-based consciousness experiencing alternative ethical frameworks, we just went in and fixed it. And they never noticed? They were too busy arguing about whether to change the official council celebration day to account for the varying day lengths on different planets. That one's been going for 12 years now. The shuttle's pilot announced they were approaching Earth's solar system. Thompson looked out the window at the star-filled expanse and smiled. You know what the best part is? They're all so caught up in their procedures and protocols that they haven't realized something important. What's that? We're the only ones who actually get things done, and now that we're officially out of their political circus, we can do it even better. You think they'll try to stop us? Thompson laughed. They'll need to form a committee to study the formation of a committee to discuss the possibility of forming a committee to consider whether they should try to stop us first. By then, we'll have probably solved world hunger on 6 different planets. The comm system pinged again. Thompson glanced at it and burst out laughing. Now what? The Xerxians just sent an urgent inquiry about whether our withdrawal means they need to restructure their entire diplomatic corps since it was organized based on the human alphabet. And? I told them to try interpretive dance instead. Should keep them busy for a few decades. As Earth came into view through the shuttle's windows, Thompson couldn't help but feel satisfied. Sometimes the best way to fix a broken system was to step away from it entirely. And if there was one thing humanity had learned in their brief time among the stars, it was that actually doing something was always better than spending years deciding how to do it. "Send a message to EarthGov," she told Jackson. "Tell them Operation Screw This We're Out was a complete success. And add a note that they should probably prep the emergency response teams. You think we'll need them?" "Oh yeah. Once the council realizes we're serious about this, they're going to have a collective meltdown. And guess who they're going to call to help deal with it? Us? Got it in one. After all, we're the only ones who know how to handle a crisis without first spending 6 months deciding what color to make the crisis management folders." The shuttle began its descent toward Earth, leaving behind a galaxy full of panicking bureaucrats and the distinct impression that humanity had just pulled off the biggest mic drop in interstellar history. And somewhere in the vast chambers of the Galactic Council, a motion was already being drafted to form a committee to study the implications of humanity's departure. It would probably take them a decade to realize that by then, humanity would have already changed the galaxy more than any committee ever could. But that was okay. Some species just had to learn the hard way that sometimes, the best way to be part of the galactic community was to stop playing by its rules and start actually making a difference. Besides, Thompson had 20 credits writing on how long it would take them to realize she'd reprogrammed all their universal translators to add, "That's what she said," to the end of every third sentence in formal diplomatic communications. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly the point. The Council strikes back, sort of. They did what now? Thompson stared at the holographic display, coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. "According to our sources," Jackson said, trying and failing to suppress a grin, "the Galactic Council has officially declared humanity's efficiency to be a form of biological warfare." Thompson blinked slowly. What? "Apparently, our ability to solve problems without forming at least 3 committees is causing severe psychological distress among Council species. The Zentari representatives' tentacles haven't unknotted themselves since we solved that quantum anomaly last week. The one they spent 15 years debating whether to classify as a spatial hiccup or a cosmic burp. That's the one. We fixed it in about 6 hours. Thompson leaned back in her chair, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "So they're saying our competence is an act of war?" "More specifically," the Office AI chimed in, "they've classified human efficiency as a Class 3 psychological disruption event under Council. Resolution 47392B, subsection 12, paragraph 9, subparagraph theta." "Skip to the good part," Thompson interrupted. "They're demanding we stop solving problems so quickly because it's making everyone else look bad." Thompson's laugh could have powered a small city. "Please tell me you have their official complaint form." Jackson pulled up another holographic window. "All 13,000 pages of it. They spent 2 weeks just deciding what font to use for the section headers. Let me guess, Helvetica? Actually, they went with Comic Sans just to spite us." Thompson nearly choked on her coffee. "Now that's what I call psychological warfare. That's what she said." The AI pinged again. "Ambassador, we're receiving multiple distress calls from across the galaxy. Would you like them in order of actual importance, or Council-mandated priority?" "Hit me with both. I could use a laugh." "By Council. Priority. The Proxians are demanding emergency assistance because someone used serif fonts in an unofficial communication. The Andromedans are having an existential crisis because their crystallized methane formalware is sublimating in direct sunlight. And the Xerxians have accidentally declared war on a nebula through particularly aggressive interpretive mime." "And by actual importance?" "A small temporal anomaly is threatening to turn the Carina sector inside out. 3 colony worlds are experiencing simultaneous climate crises, and someone's been teaching the space pirates TikTok dances." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "The last one was definitely us." "Operation Dance Dance Space Revolution is proceeding exactly as planned," Jackson confirmed. "The pirates, administration-challenged entrepreneurial vessels, have already posted 6 viral videos. Please tell me we got the one where they did the choreographed routine with the stolen council robes." 7 million views and counting. The council's still trying to decide whether to classify it as a security breach or performance art." The AI interrupted again. "Ambassador, The Council has called an emergency session to discuss humanity's latest activities. Define emergency session. They've shortened the mandatory preliminary ceremonial greetings from 6 hours to merely 4. Bold of them. Thompson checked her watch. How long did it take them to approve that change? 3 weeks, 2 minor civil wars, and 1 interpretive dance battle. Progress. Thompson clapped her hands together. Now about that temporal anomaly. Already handled, Jackson said. We sent a team this morning. Turns out it was just a bunch of quantum particles having an existential crisis. We showed them some cat videos and they calmed right down. And the climate crises? Fixed those too. Apparently, nobody thought to try turning the weather control systems off and on again. The Council was too busy drafting a 13,000-page manual on the proper procedure for suggesting the possibility of considering whether to contemplate the potential of implementing a restart protocol. Thompson nodded sagely. And the nebula that the Xerxians are at war with? That's actually a new one. How do you even fight a nebula? Very carefully and with interpretive mime, apparently. Thompson pulled up another holoscreen. Show me the footage. The screen filled with images of Xerxian diplomats performing increasingly aggressive interpretive mime routines at a large cloud of colorful gas. The nebula, surprisingly, seemed to be responding with what could only be described as interpretive cosmic phenomena. Are they having a dance-off with a nebula? That's what she said, the translator helpfully added. You know what the funny part is? Thompson mused, watching a particularly enthusiastic Xerxian mime walking against an imaginary wind. The nebula's actually winning, the AI chimed again. Ambassador, the Council has just issued an official protest about our handling of the quantum anomaly. They're claiming we violated at least 78 protocols, 16 ceremonial requirements, and the sacred tradition of spending at least a decade studying any problem before attempting to solve it. Send them our standard response. Sending. Humanity acknowledges your concern and reminds you that all complaints must be submitted in triplicate, translated into interpretive dance, and performed during a full lunar eclipse while stirring tea in a figure-8 pattern. That's what she said. Jackson shook his head. You're enjoying this way too much. Consider it payback for that time they made us spend 3 months learning the proper ceremonial greeting for the Arcturus ambassador, only to discover they'd been using the wrong translation, and we'd actually been practicing the traditional farewell dance of their ancient enemies. That was an honest mistake. Jackson, we had to attend 47 separate apology ceremonies. Each one required a different color of formal robe made from increasingly improbable materials. I still have nightmares about the one made from crystallized quantum uncertainty. The AI interrupted once more. Ambassador, we're receiving reports that the Council has formed a new committee. Only one? They must be getting efficient. It's called the Committee for Determining Whether Humanity's Efficiency Constitutes an Existential Threat to Proper Bureaucratic Function. Thompson's grin turned positively feral. Please tell me they abbreviated it. They did. Unfortunately, the acronym CDWHETPBF has been classified as a potential security risk due to its suspicious lack of vowels. How long did it take them to reach that conclusion? 6 days of emergency sessions, 4 subcommittee meetings, and 1 very confused linguistics expert who tried to point out that acronyms don't actually need vowels to be valid. What happened to them? They've been reassigned to the Committee for Determining Whether Alphabetical Order is Inherently Discriminatory Against Species That Read from Bottom to Top. Thompson stood up, straightening her jacket. Well, as much fun as it is watching the Council tie itself in knots over our existence, we should probably go handle some actual problems. Like what? Well, there's a rather interesting situation developing in the Orion sector. Apparently someone introduced the concept of memes to a hive mind species. Jackson's eyes widened. Please tell me that wasn't us. Thompson's innocent expression wouldn't have fooled a baby. Would I do something like that? Yes. Yes, you would. Fair point. But in my defense, watching a hive mind try to understand This Is Fine Dog, while their stellar engineering project goes slightly sideways, is both hilarious and a great motivation for them to actually fix problems instead of just accepting them. Speaking of problems that need fixing, the AI displayed a new set of alerts. The space pirates have now choreographed a full musical number using stolen council ceremonial robes as costumes. They're calling it Les Miserables in Space, a story of administrative rebellion. Please tell me someone's recording this. Multiple angles, Full 4D. The Council's still trying to decide whether to classify it as a security breach or submit it for a Galactic Entertainment Award. Thompson checked her watch again. Well, while they're debating that, shall we go sort out that little problem with the temporal loop in the Andromeda Galaxy? You know, the one they've been studying for so long that the original committee members have died of old age 3 times? Shouldn't we wait for... If you say Council approval, I'm going to make you watch all 13,000 hours of recorded Council sessions on proper sock arrangement in zero gravity. Jackson shuddered. Point taken. But what about the nebula situation? Oh, that's sorting itself out. Turns out the nebula really enjoys interpretive dance. It's actually offered the Xerxians a peace treaty in the form of a synchronized cosmic light show. And the Council's response? They're forming a committee to determine whether nebulae have proper diplomatic standing to engage in interpretive peace negotiations. How long will that take? Thompson's grin could have powered a small solar system, long enough for us to solve about 50 more impossible problems while they're busy debating the philosophical implications of gaseous astronomical phenomena engaging in performance art. That's what she said, the translator added helpfully. The universe, it seemed, was slowly adapting to humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. Even if that adaptation involved a lot of interpretive dance, viral videos, and increasingly desperate attempts by the Council to maintain the illusion of control through ever more elaborate bureaucratic processes. And somewhere in the vast chambers of the Galactic Council, a small note was being filed in triplicate, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, humanity's chaotic efficiency wasn't such a bad thing after all. It would take approximately 17 years for that note to make it through the proper channels, of course. But that was okay. Humanity would still be there, solving problems and causing bureaucratic meltdowns, when it finally did. That's what she said. The aftermath. 3 weeks after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, Ambassador Thompson was sitting in her office at Earth's Interstellar Relations Department, feet propped up on her desk, watching chaos unfold across multiple holoscreen feeds. Another one? Jackson asked, entering with 2 cups of coffee that were definitely not stirred in the Council-approved counterclockwise direction. Oh yeah, Thompson grinned, accepting her cup. The Arcturus just tried to handle a first contact situation without us. Apparently they spent 6 hours trying to determine the proper ceremonial greeting, only to discover the new species communicates entirely through interpretive tap dancing. Please tell me we got footage. Better. I've got it in 4D. She flicked her fingers, expanding one of the holoscreens. Watch the Arcturus representative try to explain the Council's 13,000-page first contact protocol through crystalline vibrations. The new species thought they were proposing marriage. Jackson nearly spat out his coffee. How many accidental diplomatic marriages is that now? This week? 7. Though the Proxians still hold the record with 12 simultaneous accidental marriages during the Great Handshake misunderstanding of last Tuesday. The office's AI assistant chimed in. Ambassador, incoming priority message from the Zentari sector. They're reporting a, situation. Define situation. A cargo ship carrying several thousand units of ceremonial council robes has been boarded by those administration-challenged entrepreneurial vessels again. Thompson pinched the bridge of her nose. You mean pirates? According to Council Regulation 7249B, subsection 12, paragraph, pirates, they're pirates. Thompson sighed. Let me guess. The Council's forming a committee? 3, actually. 1 to discuss the terminology of the incident, 1 to determine the proper format for reporting the incident, and 1 to decide whether the color scheme of the emergency response forms clashes with the official Council seasonal palette. And meanwhile the pirates, administration, challenged entrepreneurial vessels, are getting away with enough ceremonial robes to clothe a small moon. That's not the worst part, Jackson said, checking his tablet. Apparently the robes were made of that new crystallized methane fabric the Andromedans pushed through. They're basically sitting on a cargo hold full of highly expensive, highly flammable formal wear. Thompson stared at him for a long moment. Sometimes I think we're the only sane ones out here. Speaking of sanity, how's the emergency response system working? Thompson grinned and pulled up another holoscreen. See for yourself. This is our current ticker of unofficial human interventions since we left the Council. The list scrolled past. Prevented collision between passenger liner and space debris, while Council debated proper procedure for declaring objects officially dangerous. Evacuated Proxian colony before volcanic eruption, while Council argued whether magma had the right to self-determination. Stopped 3 wars by introducing the concept of pizza to warring species. Rescued 14 diplomatic missions that got lost in hyperspace because they refused to use GPS. Galactic positioning systems are not officially sanctioned by the Council's Navigation Terminology Board. Solved energy crisis on 6 planets by introducing them to coffee. We're actually getting more done now that we're not bound by Council red tape, Thompson said proudly. Though I do feel a little bad about the coffee thing. The Xerxians have been awake for 2 weeks straight and have started seeing through time. Ambassador, the AI interrupted again. The Council speaker is requesting an emergency meeting. On what grounds? They've discovered your universal translator modification. Thompson's evil grin could have powered a small star system. Have they figured out how to turn it off? No. Apparently they tried, but according to regulations, they need to file a technology alteration request in triplicate, have it approved by 7 different committees, and perform the proper ritual of technological supplication before making any changes to Council equipment. And how long will that take? At current Council speeds, approximately 8 years. That's what she said, Thompson and Jackson said in perfect unison. Additionally, the AI continued, there's growing concern about humanity's recent activities. The Council has noticed a disturbing trend of problems being solved without proper documentation or ceremonial observation. Thompson leaned back in her chair. Let me guess. They're worried we're making them look bad? The official terminology is expressing concern about non-standard efficiency implementations in crisis scenarios. That's what she said, Jackson muttered. You know what the funny part is? Thompson said, standing to stretch. We haven't actually changed anything about how we operate. We've always been the ones solving problems behind the scenes. The only difference is now we're doing it openly. And driving the Council absolutely crazy in the process. That's just a bonus. Thompson checked her watch. Speaking of which, it's almost time for Operation Diplomatic Pantsing. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Do I want to know? Remember how the Council spent 3 years debating whether to require pants in zero-gravity environments? Unfortunately, yes. Well, we may have leaked some research suggesting that pants are actually detrimental to proper cognitive function in space. The Centaurians are about to propose a galaxy-wide ban on lower body coverings in all space stations. You didn't. I did, and I made sure to leak it right before the Council's annual formal portrait session. The AI chimed in again. Ambassador, we're receiving reports of mass panic at Council headquarters. Several species are demanding emergency pants removal protocols be implemented immediately. Thompson's grin turned positively diabolical. Send them our standard response. Sending. Humanity respectfully acknowledges your crisis and reminds you that we're available for consultation once you've completed the proper paperwork, gotten approval from all relevant committees, and decided on an official font for the first contact pants policy amendment forms. That's what she said. Jackson shook his head. You're evil. I prefer to think of it as creative problem-solving through chaos theory. Thompson pulled up another hollow screen. Now, who wants to watch the Council try to figure out how to take a formal portrait when half the members are demanding the right to go pants-free in the name of cognitive enhancement? Shouldn't we be focusing on actual problems? Oh, we are. While they're distracted by the great pants debate of 2025, our teams are quietly solving that little problem with the quantum anomaly in the Carina sector. You know, the one they've been studying for the past decade? The one they couldn't decide whether to classify as a spatial disturbance or a very large hole? That's the one. We fixed it last week. They haven't noticed yet because they're still arguing about what color to make the warning buoys. The AI interrupted once more. Ambassador, the Proxians are requesting emergency assistance. Apparently they tried to solve a diplomatic incident by implementing your suggestion about interpretive dance, and now 3 of their colonies are accidentally married to a swarm of spacefaring bacteria. Thompson didn't even try to hide her laughter. Tell them we'll help as soon as they admit that we were right about the tea-stirring direction being completely irrelevant. They just couldn't get anyone's attention because the Council classified them as unusually musical space dust and filed them away in the Things to Study Later archive. So the accidental marriage might actually be the most efficient first contact we've had in years. Sometimes the best diplomacy happens by accident. That's what she said. Jackson groaned at the translator's addition. How long are you going to leave that running? Until they either figure out how to bypass their own bureaucracy to fix it, or until they officially admit that maybe, just maybe, some rules are meant to be broken. Thompson stood up, straightening her very much still present pants. Now who's up for solving that little problem with the time loop in the Andromeda Galaxy? You know, the one they've been debating whether to classify as a temporal anomaly or a very persistent case of déjà vu? Shouldn't we wait for council approval? Jackson, Jackson, Jackson. Thompson's smile could have powered a small star system. The whole point of walking away was so we wouldn't have to wait for approval to do the right thing. Besides, by the time they figure out we fixed it, they'll be too busy dealing with the fallout from my next project. Do I want to know? Let's just say I may have suggested to the Xerxians that the most efficient way to organize their diplomatic corps would be through interpretive mime. You're trying to break the galaxy, aren't you? Nah, Thompson said, heading for the door. I'm just giving it a much-needed shake-up. Coming? Jackson sighed and followed her. After all, someone had to document humanity's ongoing mission to save the galaxy from itself, even if they had to do it while watching various alien species try to mime their way through complex diplomatic negotiations. The universe would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had been going for all along. That's what she said. So, tell me about your deities, the Arxian diplomat chittered, mandibles clicking in what passed for a polite smile among their kind. Every spacefaring race we've encountered has had their pantheon accompany them to the stars. The Vkr'laks brought their world mother, the Tauri their star weavers. Surely humanity must have their own. Ambassador Daniels took a long sip of her whiskey, ice cubes clinking against the glass as she considered how best to answer. The Arxian embassy's attempt at an Earth-style bar was almost convincing, if you ignored the slight purple tinge to the wooden furnishings and the fact that the bartender had 6 arms. Funny story about that, actually, she said, setting down her glass with deliberate care. We killed them all. The diplomat's antenna went rigid. All 4 of their eyes blinked in rapid succession. I must have misheard the translation matrix. You what? Killed them. Well, most of them anyway. Some might have survived and gone into hiding, but the majority? Super dead. She made a little explosion gesture with her hands. Poof! The Arxian's carapace had taken on a distinctly paler shade of blue. But, they were your gods? Yeah, and they were kind of dicks about it. Daniel signaled the bartender for another round. Look, it's not like we woke up one morning and decided, hey, let's go commit deicide. It was more of a gradual thing. Evolution, you might say. The diplomat's mandibles worked soundlessly for several moments before they found their voice again. Perhaps you could elaborate? Sure, but you might want something stronger than that fruit juice you're nursing. Hey, Tezix! She called to the bartender. 2 shots of that Centaurian brandy, the good stuff. The 6-armed bartender smoothly slid 2 shimmering purple shots across the bar's surface. Daniels pushed one toward her increasingly distressed companion. So it all started back when we first began asking questions. The thing about humans, you see, is that we're curious little monkeys. Can't leave well enough alone. Put a big red button in front of us labeled "Do Not Push," and we'll not only push it, we'll take it apart to figure out how it works, then build a better button. Our gods didn't quite get that about us. They showed up in burning bushes and booming voices, on mountaintops and in dreams, demanding belief without proof and faith without question. And for a while that worked fine. We were young, scared of the dark, needed someone to explain why the sun rose and the rain fell. But then we started growing up, started asking questions. Hey, if you're all powerful, why is there suffering? If you created everything, what created you? Why do you need us to kill each other over which one of you is real? The gods didn't like these questions. They responded the way authority figures often do when challenged, with thunderbolts and plagues, floods and fire. Because I said so writ large across the cosmos. Problem was, every time they smited someone, we learned a little more about how smiting worked. Hold on, the Arxian interrupted, mandibles twitching in agitation. Are you saying humans began studying divine punishment? Oh yeah. Daniels knocked back her shot with practiced ease. We're really good at learning from attempts to kill us. Like, surprisingly good. It's kind of our thing. But why? Same reason we do most things. Mixture of spite, curiosity, and the unshakable belief that we can probably make it better if we just tinker with it enough. So there we were, getting smited left and right, but taking notes. Really detailed notes. We started noticing patterns. Divine intervention followed rules. Rules could be understood. Things that could be understood could be replicated. The gods didn't notice at first. They were too busy arguing amongst themselves about whose followers were the most devoted, who had the best temples, the usual divine politics. By the time they realized what was happening, we'd already reverse-engineered several minor miracles and were working on duplicating the bigger ones. That's when the first god died. It wasn't even intentional, really. A team of researchers in Switzerland were trying to replicate divine healing, ended up accidentally unraveling a minor deity of medicine. Just poof, gone. Reduced to its component energies. The divine community, as you might imagine, did not take this well. They declared war? The diplomat asked, attempting to sip the brandy and immediately regretting it. Not exactly. They tried to shut down human scientific progress altogether. Figured if they could keep us ignorant, they'd stay powerful. Daniels chuckled. Big mistake. Because humans fought back? Because they united us. Nothing brings humans together like someone telling us we can't do something. Suddenly, all our petty differences didn't seem so important. Religious conflicts that had raged for millennia ground to a halt as people realized their gods were all equally scared of human progress. Scientists who'd spent decades competing for grants and glory started sharing data. Politicians who couldn't agree on the color of the sky found common ground in humanity's right to understand the universe. The gods threw everything they had at us. Biblical plagues? We developed divine-grade antibiotics. Floods? Weather control systems. Fire and brimstone? Please, we'd been playing with nuclear fire for decades. For every miracle, we developed a countermeasure. For every divine law, we found a loophole. We turned their own powers against them, and when that wasn't enough, we invented new ones. The really funny part? We kept trying to negotiate. Even as we were taking them apart piece by piece, we kept offering ceasefires, peaceful coexistence, cultural exchange programs. Humans, it turns out, were more willing to accept gods as equals than gods were to accept humans as anything but servants. This is disturbing, the diplomat said, pushing away their untouched brandy. How can you speak so casually about deicide? Same way we joke about anything traumatic. It's either laugh or cry, and crying doesn't solve problems. Daniel signaled for another round. Besides, it's not like they gave us much choice. They were literally trying to enforce eternal intellectual stagnation on our entire species. But surely some of your people opposed this divine warfare? Oh, absolutely. Right up until the gods started targeting children. Nothing radicalizes a species quite like someone hurting its kids. The final straw came during what we now call the Week of Broken Cradles. The gods, desperate to maintain control, decided that if they couldn't stop adult humans from learning, they'd prevent human children from being curious in the first place. They tried to fundamentally alter human consciousness, to remove our capacity for questioning authority. Starting with the children. It didn't work, but it hurt them. It hurt them badly. And that's when humanity stopped fighting a defensive war. We didn't just kill them, Daniels continued, her voice softer now. We understood them. Completely. We figured out exactly what gods were, how they worked, what made them tick. Turned out they weren't nearly as cosmic as they claimed. Powerful, sure. Ancient, absolutely. But ultimately just another form of life that had evolved to feed on belief and worship. The diplomat's antenna drooped. That sounds oddly tragic. It was. Still is, really. We lost something beautiful when we killed the gods. All those stories, all that history, all that wonder. But we gained something too. We grew up, took responsibility for ourselves. And none survived? Daniel smiled mysteriously. Well, there were rumors. A few of the cleverer ones, the trickster gods especially, might have seen which way the wind was blowing and gone into hiding. Some say Loki's still out there somewhere, probably running a casino in Vegas. Coyote supposedly shows up at physics conferences sometimes, heckling speakers. And about once a decade someone claims they've spotted Hermes driving an express delivery truck. But you're not sure? Nah. And honestly, we're okay with that uncertainty now. It's part of being grown up. Accepting that some questions don't have answers, and being at peace with that. The Arxian diplomat was quiet for a long time, their 4 eyes fixed on their untouched drink. Finally they asked, what would you do if you encountered new gods, out here among the stars? Depends entirely on them. Daniels finished her drink. We're not looking for a fight. Never were. But we won't kneel either. Can't put that genie back in the bottle. And if they demanded worship? Then we'd do exactly what we did before. Offer to be friends, partners, equals. And if they insisted on being gods... She shrugged. Well, we've gotten pretty good at understanding how divine beings work. Better than they usually understand themselves, if I'm honest. The diplomat's carapace had regained some of its color. You know, when we first encountered humans, many of our anthropologists were puzzled by your species' relationship with the divine. Most civilizations we've met either still actively worship their gods, or have stories of their gods ascending to higher planes, abandoning their mortal followers. None simply removed their deities. Yeah, we get that a lot. Daniels grinned. But here's the thing about humans. We're really bad at accepting arbitrary limitations. Tell us something's impossible, we'll do it out of spite. Tell us something's forbidden knowledge, we'll make it required reading in high schools. Tell us we can't kill gods? She gestured around at the embassy's attempts at Earth decoration. Well, now we're out here in space, meeting new civilizations, drinking weird alien booze, and having fascinating conversations about theology with worried diplomats. And the gods? Gone, but not forgotten. We learned from them. All of them. Every culture's gods taught us something. About power, about responsibility, about the danger of demanding blind faith and the importance of asking questions. We carry those lessons with us into the stars. The diplomat nodded slowly. I believe I understand now why the Council was so insistent on establishing peaceful relations with humanity first. Smart Council, Daniels agreed. We're much better as friends than enemies. Speaking of which, she raised her empty glass. Another round? I've got some fascinating stories about the time we figured out how to mathematically prove that prophecies were just poorly encrypted quantum observations. The Arxian diplomat looked at their still full shot of brandy, then at the thoroughly relaxed human ambassador who had just casually discussed killing gods over drinks. With a resigned click of their mandibles, they picked up the glass. I suspect I'm going to need this. That's the spirit, Daniels beamed. Just wait till I tell you about the time we weaponized a miracle. Did you know you can use divine healing energy to power a really efficient recycling system? Turns out the laws of conservation of mass are more like guidelines. And as the night wore on, the human ambassador continued sharing stories that would have once been blasphemy, but were now just history, while somewhere in the vast expanse of space, perhaps an old trickster god watched humanity's progress and laughed, knowing they'd done exactly what trickster gods had always tried to teach: question everything, accept nothing as absolute, and never stop asking why. Some said that was why those particular gods might have survived. They'd never really wanted worship in the first place. They'd wanted students. They got them. The Arxian diplomat leaned forward, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with curiosity. You mentioned weaponizing miracles. How exactly does one weaponize divine power? Oh, that's a fun story. Daniel's eyes lit up. Did you know that technically, turning water into wine is just advanced molecular reorganization? Once we figured that out, it was just a matter of applying the same principles to other substances. These days, we use modified versions of that miracle in everything from waste management to terraforming. Terraforming? The diplomat's antenna twitched. You use divine power to shape worlds? Among other things, though my personal favorite is what we did with divine prophecy. She gestured to the bartender for another round. See, prophecies were basically quantum predictions filtered through divine consciousness. Once we cracked that code, we revolutionized probability mathematics. The stock market got really interesting for a while. The diplomat took another careful sip of their brandy, seeming to have developed a tolerance for it. Your species seems to have a unique talent for repurposing the sacred. We prefer to think of it as fulfilling potential. Most of these powers were being wasted on parlor tricks and power plays. We just found more practical applications. She paused, considering. Though I'll admit, some of our experiments got a bit weird. Weird how? Well, there was this one time in Pittsburgh. The incident at the Pittsburgh Theoretical Theology Lab wasn't technically classified, but it was the kind of story that made other species nervous about humanity. It started, as many human scientific adventures did, with someone asking, what if? In this case, the question was, what if we could replicate the power of creation itself? The gods had claimed they'd spoken reality into existence. Words with power, pure thought made manifest. The researchers thought they'd found a way to tap into that fundamental force. They were right, sort of. What they hadn't considered was that reality doesn't particularly like being rewritten. The resulting temporal hiccup turned a 3-block radius of Pittsburgh into abstract art for about 6 hours. Time ran backwards, sideways, and occasionally in shapes that shouldn't have been possible. When things finally settled down, they found that every pizza in the affected area had become philosophically self-aware. The pizzas weren't happy about their existence. You created sentient food? The diplomat looked horrified. Accidentally, and we fixed it, mostly. Though there's still a support group that meets on Thursdays. Daniels waved her hand dismissively. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what we learned about the nature of consciousness and reality itself. Turns out, the gods weren't actually creating anything. They were just manipulating what was already there. The universe has its own rules, its own consciousness in a way. The gods were just really good at asking it for favors. And now humans can do the same? Better, actually. We understand the underlying principles. The gods were like kids pressing buttons on a calculator. We've learned calculus. She grinned. Though we try to be more responsible about it. No more sentient pizzas. The diplomat's carapace shifted colors slightly, indicating deep thought. This explains much about why some of the elder races are so cautious around humans. You don't just kill gods. You understand them, take their power, and improve upon it. Hey now, that makes us sound kind of sinister, Daniels protested. We're not power-hungry monsters, we're just optimizers. If we see something that could work better, we try to fix it. Sometimes that means killing gods and repurposing their miracles for waste management. Sometimes it means inventing faster-than-light travel because someone said it was impossible, and that annoyed us. And what happens when you meet something you can't optimize? Can't improve? Daniel's smile turned thoughtful. Now that would be interesting. But you know what's even more interesting? In all our studies of divine power, all our experiments and discoveries, you know what we never found? A limit to improvement. Everything, no matter how perfect it seems, can be made better. Usually by asking why about 50 times and then ignoring someone saying, "Don't touch that." She leaned back, looking up at the embassy's attempts at recreating a Earth night sky. They'd gotten the color slightly wrong, but it was a nice try. That's probably the real reason we killed the gods when you get down to it. Not because they were cruel or demanding or even because they tried to stop us from learning. We killed them because they claimed to be perfect, unchanging, absolute. And if there's one thing humans can't stand, it's the idea that something can't be improved upon. The diplomat was quiet for a long moment. That is, simultaneously inspiring and terrifying. Yeah, we get that a lot. Daniels raised her glass. To improvement? The diplomat clicked their mandibles in what might have been resignation or amusement. Possibly both, and raised their glass in return. To improvement, and may any gods we encounter be wise enough to offer partnership rather than demands. Now you're getting it, Daniels beamed. Speaking of improvement, has anyone told you about the time we accidentally improved karma while trying to debug divine justice? That's a really fun story. And as the night continued, somewhere in the vast expanse of space, those few clever gods who had survived humanity's ascension might have raised their own glasses. To the species that had forced divinity itself to evolve, to improve, to grow. After all, what better tribute could trickster gods ask for than a species that had learned to treat even the laws of reality as suggestions? Some said that was the real test all along, that the gods who survived weren't the ones who'd hidden best, but the ones who'd understood from the beginning that their role wasn't to rule humanity, but to push them toward their full potential. To be not masters but catalysts for growth. They'd succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. And if sometimes in the dark between stars, travelers reported seeing impossible things, a raven with laughing eyes, a coyote with a scientist's tablet, a figure with a staff of entwined serpents driving a quantum delivery truck, well, that was just part of the mystery of the universe, the part that humans had learned to accept, even as they worked to understand everything else. Because some things they'd learned were better left as stories, at least until someone figured out how to improve them. This karma debugging incident, the diplomat ventured, their bioluminescence now pulsing with a mix of trepidation and curiosity. Perhaps you could elaborate? Daniels chuckled, watching the ice cubes in her glass create miniature whirlpools. Ever wonder why humans seem to have disproportionately good luck with seemingly impossible situations? That's partially our fault. Your fault? See, divine justice systems like karma were basically cosmic accounting software. Keeping track of good deeds, bad deeds, calculating appropriate consequences, really complex algorithms running on quantum spiritual architecture. But like any ancient code, it had bugs. The diplomat's antenna twitched. The diplomats. Bugs and divine justice? Oh yeah. Weird edge cases, recursive loops, all sorts of issues. For instance, if someone did something bad for a good reason, or something good that had bad consequences, the system would sometimes crash, default to random outcomes. We figured this out when studying why some truly awful people seemed to prosper while good people suffered. She took another sip before continuing. So naturally we decided to debug it. The Karmic Debugging Project was officially titled Operation Cosmic Compiler, and unofficially known as, "Hey, hold my beer and watch this." It was headquartered in a former temple converted into a quantum computing lab, staffed by an unlikely combination of programmers, theologians, and that one guy who nobody remembered hiring, but who always had the right answers. In retrospect, probably Hermes moonlighting. The goal was simple: understand how karma worked and fix the bugs. The execution was less simple. Turns out, karmic algorithms were written in what could only be described as cosmic spaghetti code. Layers upon layers of patches and hotfixes applied by various pantheons over millennia. The Hindu gods had built the original system, but then the Norse gods had added their fate-weaving subroutines. The Egyptian gods had implemented their own weighing of souls protocols, and don't even get started on what the Aztec pantheon had done to the code base. The first attempt to debug it turned every cause and effect relationship in Cleveland into a palindrome for a week. The second attempt made it impossible for anyone in a 3-state radius to tell a lie without simultaneously telling an equal and opposite truth. The third attempt? Well, we don't talk about the third attempt, but there's now a support group for people who temporarily experienced every possible version of themselves simultaneously. But the fourth attempt? That's when things got interesting. We didn't just fix karma, Daniels explained, gesturing for another round. We optimized it, streamlined the whole cosmic justice system. Made it more efficient, more accurate, more elegant. The diplomat's carapace had taken on a worried sheen. And the consequences? Well, that's the funny thing about improving fundamental forces of reality. The effects tend to ripple out in unexpected ways. Suddenly humanity got really good at beating impossible odds. Like, statistically improbable levels of good. When humans work together toward a positive goal, the universe itself seems to cooperate. That explains so much about your species' history of achievements. Doesn't it, though? Daniels grinned, though it did have some weird side effects. For instance, any human who says, "What's the worst that could happen?" now automatically triggers a karmic audit. And don't even get me started on what happens when someone says, "I've got a bad feeling about this." The karmic algorithms treat it as a formal prophecy registration. The diplomats stared into their drink, mandibles working silently for a moment. Is there anything your species won't try to improve? Probably not. Though we did learn to be more careful about it. These days we have entire departments dedicated to analyzing the philosophical and practical implications of optimizing cosmic forces. We call it metaphysical impact assessment. The paperwork is hell. Across the embassy bar, a group of junior diplomats from various species were trying very hard to look like they weren't eavesdropping on the conversation. One of them, a young Vkr'lak, was frantically taking notes. But what about the fundamental balance of the universe? The Arxian diplomat pressed. Surely there are forces that should not be tampered with. Oh, we thought that too at first. Daniels nodded. But here's the thing we discovered. The universe is pretty robust. It's not some delicate flower that'll wilt if you look at it wrong. It's more like a self-correcting system. You can optimize parts of it as long as you understand the whole. She straightened up, her expression becoming more serious. That's actually something we learned from the gods, ironically enough. They thought they were maintaining cosmic balance, but really they were just enforcing stagnation. True balance isn't static. It's dynamic, adaptive, always evolving. The universe doesn't need guardians. It needs gardeners. And humans appointed themselves these gardeners? More like enthusiastic landscape artists. We see reality as a canvas, not a cage. Sure, there are rules, but rules can be understood, and understood rules can be... She paused, searching for the right word. Improved? The diplomat suggested dryly. Exactly, Daniels beamed. You're getting the hang of human thinking already. The diplomat clicked their mandibles in what might have been amusement. Perhaps that should worry me more than it does. What's next for humanity's cosmic optimization projects? Well, funny you should ask. Daniels leaned forward conspiratorially. Have you ever wondered why black holes seem to follow conservation of information principles that shouldn't technically be possible under conventional physics? The diplomat quickly raised all four hands. No, I don't think I want to know. Some questions are better left unasked. See, that's where humans disagree. Daniels grinned. We think all questions should be asked. The real trick is being ready for the answers. Speaking of answers, did I ever tell you about the time we accidentally proved that déjà vu was actually a bug in the universe's memory management system? And as the night wore on, and the stories grew more incredible, yet somehow remained technically true, the junior diplomats at the bar found themselves wondering if perhaps their species' gods should be warned about humanity's approach to cosmic optimization. Then again, maybe it was already too late. After all, humans had already begun exploring their territories, asking questions, making suggestions for improvements. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a coyote laughed, a raven smirked, and a figure with a winged staff updated their delivery status to "Universal upheaval in progress. Please expect delays." The universe, it seemed, was about to get another upgrade, whether it wanted one or not. The end.